The rain had just started to fall when Dr. Nathaniel Brooks stepped out of his car in the staff parking lot of Redwood Medical Center. He didn't rush, didn't bother with an umbrella. His navy blue scrubs were already damp from the short walk, his badge tucked into his jacket pocket. He had chosen to enter through the side staff entrance that morning. Not the front lobby. Not the executive wing. He wanted to see things for himself. Not from the polished view reserved for people with titles, but the way the hospital actually ran day to day. Inside, the hallway was quiet. White floors, fluorescent lights, the usual antiseptic smell. Nathaniel moved toward the elevator, then paused when he saw the sign for the physician's lounge. He figured he'd drop in. Say hello. Nothing official yet, just presence. As he pushed open the door, he didn't even make it halfway in. Excuse me, this room is for medical staff only, said a voice from across the lounge. The nurse didn't look up from the coffee machine at first. Just registered the hoodie, the wet scrubs, the skin tone. Nathaniel stopped. I know, he said simply. The nurse turned then. Mid-40s, tight ponytail, quick eyes, the kind that scanned for compliance. She looked him up and down, the edge in her voice rising. Are you delivering something? You can leave it at the front desk. She motioned toward the hallway with a nod. Nathaniel didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. No, he said. I'm not delivering anything. She tilted her head, annoyed now. Then I'm going to have to ask you to leave this area. It's for doctors only. Nathaniel reached into his pocket slowly and pulled out his ID badge. He didn't show it yet. He just held it loosely in his hand. Watching. Waiting. But he said nothing. The nurse took a step closer. Her voice dropped just a bit, still firm but now laced with suspicion. Sir, I don't think you understand. This isn't a public area. If you're lost, I can call someone to help you. Nathaniel stayed where he was, calm. I'm not lost, he said. She folded her arms. Then I'm going to need to see some ID before you go any further. He nodded slightly, held out the badge. She snatched it quickly. Looked at the photo. The name. Nathaniel J. Brooks, M.D. Then at the bottom, the title, Chief of Surgery. Her fingers hesitated. Eyes locked on the text. Then back at him. Then again at the badge, as if her eyes had misread. Oh, she said softly. The pause stretched. Nathaniel didn't smirk. Didn't gloat. He just stood still. I didn't know, she said, voice thinner now. You're new, right? I haven't seen you before. First day, he replied, voice even. She handed back the badge with both hands, as if trying to show respect now. Her posture had shifted. Shoulders back. Less authority, more apology. He took the badge, tucked it back into his pocket without a word. Around the lounge, a few people were watching. Doctors. Residents. Nobody had said anything yet, but the silence had thickened. One nurse near the fridge blinked slowly, then looked away. Nathaniel finally stepped inside the lounge. One step. Two. Then stopped near the window. He didn't speak again. He didn't need to. The tension stayed in the room, quietly rearranging itself. The nurse who'd confronted him, her name tag read J. Whitmore, hovered near the counter now, fussing with the coffee pot, though it was already full. Her back was stiff. She glanced over once, then quickly looked down. In the corner, two junior doctors sat by the window, halfway through their breakfast sandwiches. One of them leaned slightly toward the other. Did she just? He whispered. Yeah, the other replied, not looking up. Neither said more. Nathaniel leaned against the wall near the window, arms folded. His eyes drifted over the room. Not scanning. Just observing. Quietly. Like someone who was used to being watched but had learned the value of watching back. Dr. Keating, a cardiologist in her 60s with graying curls and a gentle reputation, entered the lounge mid-sentence, laughing with a colleague. She stopped when she saw him. Oh, she said. Her eyes flicked to Whitmore, then to Nathaniel. Good morning. Nathaniel nodded. Morning. Something in his tone made her pause. A few beats passed. Whitmore finally turned from the coffee pot and addressed the room without looking at anyone directly. I didn't recognize Dr. Brooks, she said, voice low, controlled. There was some confusion. No one replied. It wasn't that they didn't hear. It was that there was nothing to say that wouldn't make it worse. Nathaniel didn't respond either. He just walked to the counter, calmly poured himself a cup of coffee and took a seat near the far wall. Alone. And that was the moment the room felt it. Not outrage. Not fear. Just quiet shame. 10 minutes passed. The door opened again. This time it was Dr. Sandra Liu, head of internal medicine. She moved with purpose, a folder tucked under one arm, her ID badge swinging from her coat pocket. She spotted Nathaniel immediately and smiled. There you are, she said, stepping toward him. I was wondering if you'd find your way in here. Nathaniel stood, shook her hand. I took the long route. Dr. Liu glanced around the lounge. Noticed the stillness. The quiet shift in posture. She didn't ask, she read the room easily. I hope they were welcoming, she said, though it wasn't really a question. Nathaniel's answer was simple. They were, honest. A pause. Dr. Liu turned to the group. Everyone, if you haven't met him yet, this is Dr. Nathaniel Brooks. He's joining us as our new chief of surgery. Murmurs stirred. A few nods. One or two forced smiles. The junior doctors straightened in their seats. Dr. Liu continued, her tone light but firm. Dr. Brooks has a long history with trauma care, surgical systems redesign, and mentorship. We're lucky to have him. Then she turned back to Nathaniel. You ready for the grand tour? He nodded, finishing the last sip of coffee. I am. As they walked out, Whitmore stared at the floor. Not because he had scolded her. He hadn't. But because he hadn't needed to. They walked side by side down the main corridor. Nurses passed with charts in hand, glancing at them, then looking away. Some nodded. Some didn't. Dr. Liu kept her pace slow, steady. She was giving him time, and he knew it. You'll get the usual curve, she said casually. People warming up. Adjusting. That sort of thing. Nathaniel nodded. I've seen it before. She glanced at him. I imagine you have. They turned a corner toward the surgical wing. The hum of monitors and muffled overhead pages filled the background. A few residents waited outside or two, reviewing notes on a tablet. They looked up as he passed. One, a tall man with tired eyes, stood a little straighter. Dr. Liu slowed, gestured subtly toward the window. That's Dr. Patel's team. Good with the knife, still green on instinct. You'll be working closely. Nathaniel took in the scene quietly. Good. I'm looking forward to seeing how they work under pressure. Dr. Liu tilted her head. They'll learn fast. As they moved on, a nurse standing at the station leaned over to whisper to a colleague. Nathaniel caught it in the corner of his vision. He didn't react, didn't change pace. But the nurse noticed he had seen her. Her whisper stopped mid-sentence. By the time he reached the next set of doors, the air around them felt different. Not tense. Just watched. Like the hospital had realized something. They reached the administrative wing, less noise, more polished floors, and the faint scent of coffee that had been brewed hours ago and left to burn in a pot no one remembered to clean. Dr. Liu pushed open the door to the corner office. It was spacious. Clean desk. 2 chairs. A whiteboard with charts no one had erased. Still unfamiliar, still waiting to be claimed. This'll be yours, she said, setting the folder on the desk. We kept it untouched since the last chief left. Nathaniel looked around once. Didn't sit. I'll take time to settle in later, he said. I want to be where the staff is. Not just behind this door. Dr. Liu smiled almost apologetically. Not everyone's used to that. Most stay in the upper floor for the first few days. I'm not most. She nodded, the smile tightening at the edges. Then she stepped aside as someone knocked gently on the door. It was the nurse, Whitmore. She stood in the doorway, posture straighter now. Still in her scrubs. Still the same person. But something had changed in her eyes. I just wanted to say, she started, voice low, about earlier. I made an assumption. Nathaniel didn't respond right away. He looked at her. Not with resentment. Just clarity. Then he said yes. You did. Whitmore's breath caught. I'm sorry, she added quietly. Nathaniel gave a small nod. I don't need an apology for me. Just make sure the next person doesn't need one either. She stood still for a second longer, then nodded back and left. Dr. Liu didn't speak. She didn't need to. It was clear. The new chief had arrived. Word moved fast. By mid-afternoon, Nathaniel's name was known across every floor. Not from an announcement. Not from a memo. From whispers. From hallway glances. From that one moment in the lounge that had already grown into a dozen different versions. Did you hear what happened? Apparently, he didn't even flinch. Chief of surgery? Seriously? In those shoes? Some added details that weren't true. Others left out the most important parts. But the truth had already started doing its work. In the cafeteria, a group of surgical residents sat hunched over their trays. One of them, a young woman with her hair tied back and dark circles under her eyes, said quietly, I think he's the real deal. Another shrugged. We'll see. He's still just another admin until he proves otherwise. The woman didn't respond, but she remembered how still he had been. How calm. She'd seen it before, in trauma bays, not offices. Back on the surgical floor, Whitmore moved through her rounds without the usual edge. She greeted people more deliberately. Paused before giving instructions. Not overly kind. Just aware. She caught herself looking for Nathaniel more than once. Not because she feared him. Because something about that quiet composure had unsettled her. Not in a bad way. In the way truth does when it refuses to shout. At 4 p.m., the weekly surgical staff meeting began. Most assumed it would be the usual, updates, schedules, minor complaints. No one expected the new chief to attend, let alone lead it. But Nathaniel was already in the room when they arrived. Sitting at the table. No assistant. No notes. Just present. He stood when the last person walked in. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice even, not loud, but enough to carry. I know some of you expected to hear from me later this week. I figured I'd skip the formality. A few heads turned. A few backs straightened. He scanned the room, not to intimidate but to read the space, who was open, who wasn't, who was waiting for the speech they'd heard a dozen times before. I'm not here to impress anyone, he continued. I'm here to do the work, and I expect the same from all of you. No reaction yet. Just stillness. Respect isn't a slogan, he said. It's not written in code books or stitched into coats. It's in the tone you use when you speak to someone you think has nothing to offer. The room went quiet. He let it hang. I've seen what happens when good teams fall apart. It starts with assumptions. The ones you don't say out loud, but they show up in how you look at someone, in who you interrupt, in who you ignore. Now they were listening. And I've also seen what happens when people stop doing that. It changes everything. Silence. He stepped back. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for awareness. That's where we start. No applause. No affirmations. Just the sound of chairs shifting as people recalibrated. After the meeting, most left quietly. No small talk. No jokes. Just nods and the occasional glance toward Nathaniel. A few stayed behind, residents mostly hovering near the coffee machine, speaking in low tones. Dr. Patel approached him last. The senior attending had been quiet through the whole meeting, arms folded, expression unreadable. You've got a calm way of lighting a fire, he said. Nathaniel gave a slight smile. That wasn't the goal? Maybe not. But it's working. Patel didn't linger. Just gave a respectful nod and left. Nathaniel remained alone in the conference room for a few minutes, straightening chairs out of habit. Not because he needed to. Because he always did. It gave him a sense of rhythm, something steady. As he stepped out into the hallway, he passed Whitmore again. She looked up as if expecting him to say something. He didn't. He just nodded once. And she nodded back. No more tension. Just recognition. That evening, in the staff locker room, Dr. Lena Chambers, a third-year surgical resident, sat alone on a bench, staring at her phone, not typing. Just holding it. She had watched the whole thing unfold earlier. The confrontation. The apology. The meeting. She hadn't said a word through any of it. Now, the silence felt heavier than before. Nathaniel entered quietly, heading for his locker. He didn't notice her at first. She cleared her throat. Dr. Brooks? He turned. Yes. She stood up slowly. Can I ask you something? Of course. She hesitated, then said, when that nurse confronted you this morning, why didn't you say who you were right away? He studied her face. Not suspicious. Just curious. Because I wanted to see how the moment would go, he said. Not as chief of surgery. Just as a man in that space. She nodded slowly. I don't think I could have done that, she admitted. I would have snapped. Or walked out. I used to, he said quietly. But I learned there's more power in letting people reveal themselves. She thought about that. Then asked, and what do you do with what they reveal? Nathaniel looked at her for a long moment. That depends on what they do after. She nodded again. Didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. Later that night, Nathaniel sat in his office, finally alone. The light was low, the building mostly quiet except for the occasional squeak of a cleaning cart down the hall. He pulled out his phone and tapped the contact labeled simply, Mom? She answered on the second ring. Nate, she said. Her voice warm, a little tired. You get through your first day? He leaned back in the chair. I did. A pause. Rough? Parts of it. She didn't push. I didn't tell anyone who I was when I walked in, he said. Not right away. I figured you wouldn't, she replied. You always like to walk through the front door like you didn't own the house. He smiled, just a little. Someone made a scene. Called me out in front of the lounge. Thought I didn't belong. Did you tell them? Eventually. And before that? I let them talk. Silence on the line, but the kind that carried understanding. Same thing happened to your uncle once, she said. Back when he started teaching. Student mistook him for janitorial staff. He didn't correct her either. Just handed her the syllabus after class. Nathaniel exhaled through his nose, quietly amused. You okay? She asked. I'm fine. And he was. Not untouched. Not immune. Just ready. Go get some rest, she said gently. The first day tells them who you are. The second tells them who they're going to be. He nodded. I'll call you tomorrow. The next morning started differently. In the physician's lounge, people paused before speaking. Some greeted each other more deliberately. Coffee was poured without the usual passive jabs or half-ignored nods. Whitmore walked in, holding a clipboard. She didn't linger. Didn't try to be overly polite. But when she saw Nathaniel already seated at the table reviewing a chart, she spoke first. Morning, Dr. Brooks. He looked up. Good morning. Nothing more. But others noticed. Dr. Patel entered a moment later and greeted Nathaniel with a small wave before heading to the fridge. We're short on gauze in or for again, he said casually, almost as if they'd worked together for years. Nathaniel nodded. I'll follow up with central supply. Even the junior residents moved differently. A few tried too hard, overcompensating with extra sirs and awkward smiles, but most just watched. Took cues. The ripple was subtle. Not an overhaul. Just the beginning of a shift. A correction. The kind that doesn't announce itself. It just grows. By midday, a trauma case rolled in: motorcycle accident, mid-30s male, internal bleeding suspected. Nathaniel scrubbed in without ceremony. No speeches, no introductions. Just action. The OR was tense, fast-moving. Monitors beeping, nurses moving in sync. Dr. Patel took lead initially, but after a minute he stepped back. "You've got this one," he said, voice calm. Nathaniel nodded, sliding in without hesitation. His hands moved with practiced precision. He didn't explain his decisions. He just worked. The team followed without question. Half an hour in, the bleeding was controlled, vitals stabilizing. A resident passed him a clamp with shaking hands. Nathaniel caught the tremor but said nothing, just steadied the clamp and kept going. When it was over, he stripped off his gloves and looked around the room. "Good work," he said evenly. Everyone nodded. No one spoke right away. Not because they were uncertain. Because they'd just seen something that didn't need explanation. It was the first time many of them had seen him operate. And now they understood something that no badge or meeting could convey. Later that afternoon, Whitmore stood alone at the nurse's station, flipping through patient files but not really reading them. Her mind kept going back to the lounge. The way he stood there. Calm. Letting her speak first. Letting her fail gently. She thought about all the times she'd made those assumptions without even realizing it. Most never said a word. Most didn't carry a title big enough to force a second look. But Nathaniel had. And he hadn't used it like a weapon. She hadn't been humiliated. She'd just been seen and made to see. That difference stuck with her. Across the floor, she saw him walking with a group of residents, answering questions. He paused once, said something low that made one of them nod quickly and scribble a note. Whitmore exhaled quietly. Then turned back to her files. This time she read them more carefully. That evening, as the hospital quieted, Nathaniel stepped out onto the rooftop deck, the place staff sometimes used for a moment of air between shifts. The city below buzzed in its usual rhythm. Nothing had changed out there. But inside, something had. A young intern appeared behind him, not realizing he wasn't alone. "Oh, sorry, Dr. Brooks. I didn't mean to interrupt." "You're not," Nathaniel said, turning slightly. "Join me if you'd like." The intern hesitated, then stepped beside him. They stood in silence for a while. "I heard what happened your first day," the intern said, finally. Nathaniel didn't answer right away. "Then, it happens more often than people think." The intern nodded slowly. "I don't think I would have handled it like you did." "That's the thing," Nathaniel said. "You don't know until you're standing there." More silence. Then the intern asked, softly, "Did you expect it?" "I expected something," he said. "Just not that quickly." The intern turned toward him. "So why stay calm?" Nathaniel looked out over the rooftops. "Because people don't change when they're embarrassed," he said. "They change when they have to sit with what they've done." The intern didn't speak again. And Nathaniel didn't say more. The moment didn't need it. The truth had already been spoken. Quietly. Firmly. The way change always begins.